Glasgow is a war zone. No, not because of some countries fighting. It is a war zone because of two crime families that have been at each other's throats for decades: the Lyons and the Daniels. Both sides have terrorized the streets of Glasgow, vomiting crimes left and right. They have conducted assassinations and attacked each other every chance they get since the beginning of this feud. But what exactly is the cause behind this rift between the two crime families, and what has led to the escalation of the rivalry, causing so much death and destruction? Let's find out together in this video. The first question that may come into your mind if you are unfamiliar with the rivalry between the Lyons and the Daniels is, who are they? The Lyons are a crime family originating in the Postle Park area of Glasgow. They operate in the United Kingdom, the United Arab Emirates, and in Spain. However, their home base is Scotland. Now, the head of the Lyons family is Stephen Lyons, who is on the run from his country and is thought to be living in Dubai. The Daniels are another underground crime family in Glasgow. The Daniels were headed by Jamie Daniel. Both families hold a lot of power and influence in Scotland. Their main trade is drug trafficking, money laundering, extortion, and blackmailing, among other things. Their actions have flooded Glasgow with drugs, placing it at the top in Europe when it comes to drug-related deaths. The Lyons and the Daniels were not always at war. The feud is only a few decades old, but the toll it has all taken on Glasgow is sad to witness. We can say that the story of the feud between the Lyons and the Daniels began in 2001. Some drugs were stolen from a house in Milton. They were then sold to the Lyons. The problem? The drugs were stolen from the Daniels. The Daniels were not happy at all about the theft, and this started a turf war that turned Glasgow into a war zone. What made matters worse was the fact that all of this happened in Milton. Milton was a territory of the Lyons, and from their point of view, the Daniels were trying to poach their territory. Feeling threatened that the Daniels were moving into Milton from Postle, they could not let the matter go unaddressed. Both sides took up arms against each other, retaliating to each other's attacks in a vicious cycle. And this is how the rivalry between the two crime families began, and it is still going on today, 20 years after the drug theft. To date, there have been more instances of violence between the Lyons and the Daniels family than we could share in a video. Just in 2021, the gangland cops were investigating more than 70 incidents related to the turf wars. The real number could be much more than that. But there are some incidents that have stood out. Let's talk about some of them. Kevin Gerbil Carroll knew the Lyons and the Daniels from his childhood. He was bullied by Stephen Lyons and his brother during his school years. This made him hate the brothers. At the same time, he became friends with the sons of Jamie Daniel, Robert and Francis, so it was no surprise that he soon grew up to be a very trusted lieutenant and an enforcer for the Daniels. Under his command, a team of thugs was formed. Their goal? To do the so-called alien abductions. He and his gang would abduct drug dealers or rival gang members and then torture them in heinous ways, all to get them to give up money, drugs, or weapons they had. Kevin was extremely cruel during these torture sessions, and in the end, his victims were left wandering, nearly naked and distraught. Lyons believed that Kevin Carroll had vandalized the grave of one of their family members, Gary Lyons. Kevin was first attacked by the Lyons in front of his mother's home. He survived the attacks and continued his dirty work. The second attack left no chance for survival. Kevin was sitting in the back of a car in a busy supermarket. Curiously, the child lock of the car was on, so there was no way for him to get out. Some masked men approached the car and shot at Carroll, from which he died. All this happened in under a minute and in broad daylight. Ross Monaghan was thought to be one of the culprits behind the murder of Kevin Carroll. Monaghan was a known Lyons associate. Even though he was not jailed because the case collapsed, in the eyes of the Daniels, he was guilty and needed to be punished. So, in January 2017, Monaghan was shot as he was taking his daughter to school. The attacker was a hitman dressed as a woman with a buggy. Ross Monaghan survived this attack and fled to Spain. But the revenge did not stop there. In December 2006, two hitmen from the Daniels conducted another attack. This time the victims were Stephen Lyons, Michael Lyons, and Robert Pickett. Of the three, Michael died, while the other two were severely wounded. The shooters were identified as Raymond Anderson and James MacDonald. Both hitmen got a sentence of 35 years, the longest sentence to be passed in a Scottish court. Robert Daniel, part of the Daniels family, was also a victim of a violent attack. In December 2016, Robert was in his car when it got rammed by another car. He realized what was happening and fled, but his attackers chased him down to a house where they were able to overpower him. Robert was hit using a machete twice to the back of his head. Luckily for him, he survived the attack. The attack was most likely conducted by the Lyons, but later Robert Daniel was asked in court if there were any enmity between the Lyons and the Daniels. He replied, "Not that I know of." Moving on, the next incident we want to share with you is that of Stephen Bonzo Daniel. Stephen had his car secretly fitted with a tracker by the Lyons. Then in May 2017, he was set upon by Lyons gang members. Stephen was chased by cars from Milton to the M8 in Glasgow. Eventually, though, the attackers caught up. They struck Stephen with knives and machetes. His injuries were so severe that the first responders thought that he had been shot. Despite that, Stephen Daniel survived the attack. Once again, the culprits behind all this were thought to be the Lyons. Much like Robert Daniel, Stephen Daniel too claimed that there was no feud between the Lyons and the Daniels. He went as far as to claim that the Daniels are not a crime family, and they did not have any real enemies. As you can tell, both the Lyons and the Daniels deny any enmity in front of the public. It's like an open secret. Both parties deny the feud in court, instead seeking justice through violent means. On top of that, the Lyons and Daniels enjoy a certain level of immunity. They have strong connections with people in power, allowing them to do as they will in many situations. Most of the attacks or killings by the two families don't see justice in courts, mainly because the cases fall through due to lack of evidence. So what's the situation today? Well, the war between the Lyons and the Daniels is raging on even now. The authorities have tried cracking down on gang violence, but not a whole lot has been achieved. For a long time, the Daniels had the advantage in the feud. That is, until the death of their leader, Jamie Daniel, in July 2016. He died of cancer, leaving the Daniels family in disarray from the loss. This put the Daniels at a disadvantage, allowing Lyons to get the upper hand. The leader of the Lyons is also on the run, last known to be staying in Dubai, but he also left Dubai after raids by the authorities. The Daniels and the Lyons are not as strong as they used to be, but even now, they are waging war against each other. How this feud will end, only time will tell. The rift between the two families is not easily repaired. Both the Lyons and the Daniels want the destruction of each other, but it is tragic to think that so many Scots have been affected by this feud. And all this over some stolen drugs that neither crime family cares about anymore. The only question we can ask is, was all the bloodshed worth it? That's about all. Let us know in the comments what you think.